In this video, we will develop the floor slabs. Again, the slab is just a term that's used for the floor structure. It's not a concrete slab. It's not a solid piece of structure. In this case, it happens to be 2x10 joists at 16 and 12 inches on center, both for the upper floor and the main floor, while for the ground floor, it's going to be a slab. Now, what we're drawing is a representation of that structure. So let's begin. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and begin with the upper level. And for that, let's go ahead and what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Home tab. And if you look at the Build panel, we have got an icon there that says Roof Slab. If you click on the small arrow to the right of it, there's an element called Slab. Now, when you start a slab, you're going to have a default size for the slab in terms of the depth. Now, unlike the walls, that when you begin, and if you have your Z icon, replace Z value with current elevation on here, you will always be drawing your base of your slab at the 0, for that level. So the wall would start at 0 and then go up. So if you give it a height of 8'2", it will go from 0 to 8'2". The slabs do exactly the opposite. The top of the slab begins at 0, and depending on the depth that you give it, it will go down, whether it's 10 inches, 4 inches, etc. So let's begin. We're going to go ahead and begin in one corner. Go to the next corner, and you can either type C for close, or we can just close it off in here. Hit enter. And let's go and let's take a look and see what happened when we go to isometric view. So as you can tell, I'm going to go ahead and change to conceptual. See what we've got here. 2D wireframe. We're going to go to conceptual. And you can see that the wall is going up and the slab went from 0 down to there. There's our grid line right there. So let's take a look at this slab. Let's go highlight it. We're going to go to the properties. And if you look right there, the thickness is 4 inches. Now, our floor structure is going to be a total of 10 inches. We've got a 2x10 joists, which is a 2x10 is a nominal dimension, so the actual dimension is 9 1/4. And then we have a 3/4 inch subfloor on top of that. So adding those together, we're going to get a total of 10 inches. If I change this to 10, and we are in units which are in inches, you're going to see that immediately that slab went ahead and became 10 inches. So let's go ahead and let's get back to top view for that one. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and now let's go to our main level. And this one's going to be a little bit different. If you take a look at our, I'm going to bring down our markup for the main level so we can take a look at that. This is our basement, and there's our main level. The majority of the house here is at what we call our benchmark elevation. It's 0 for that level. Our garage, however, even though it says 1 foot 2 inches down, we're going to make it 1 foot. The same thing applies to the covered porch and to eventually what our pool deck is going to be in the back. So what we have is we have a slab or a floor structure that will wrap around here like an L all the way around here, and that will be at the base level, and we're going to give it a depth of 10 inches. Here, our garage is actually a slab that is going to be resting on grade. And it is down, the top of it is at -1 foot in relation to our benchmark elevation. And for this one, we're going to go ahead and just give it a thickness of 4 inches. The same thing is going to apply here for the covered porch in the front. So one of the first things we need to do is sort of establish where the edge of our covered porch is going to be. And what we can do is we can use some of these dimensions. That's basically going to be 22 feet over, and that's to the center of a 4-inch column. So because there's two 4x4 posts, so what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 inches to that. And so our dimension here is going to be 22 feet 2 inches. Let me go ahead and bring that back up so I can take a look at it as I'm drawing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just in a construction layer, in this case I can just use a depth point layer, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from this corner over 22 feet 2 inches, and then another one that's going to go back to our brick right there at that point. So that's what we've got laying out into there. Now what we can do is we can we're going to be eventually erasing this, because what we're going to do is we're going to lay out our slab located right in here for our lower level slab that's going to be here, and our upper level slab located in here. So when we go back to our home tab, we're going to go to our roof slab icon, go to the little arrow on the right, and we're going to go down to slab. We're going to go ahead and we're going to begin in that corner back here, come down to there. Now what I want to do here is I don't want to go any further than this point right there. Then carry this straight across here to the kitchen wall between the kitchen and the garage. And then this one I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go down, and I am going to go to this point right there. Look at this point here, and I'm going to close it at this point. Hit enter. Now once again we can review this, and I'm going to go ahead and go to properties, and you can see that it's 4 inches. This too needs to be at 10 inches. And what's important here is take a look at this elevation located right here. It's at 0. That's exactly where we want it. There is no overhang on this slab, but the depth is 10 inches. And the floor slab for this the floor construction for this level is exactly the same as the upper. It's going to be 2 by 10 joists with a 3/4 inch tongue and groove subfloor on top of that. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our top view, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lay out our slab for our garage and the porch. Now because I've basically, for the sake of this model, we're just going to show it all at the same elevation, which the top is going to be at -1 foot. But to start with, we're going to go ahead and start it at 0, 0, and then we're going to go ahead and make adjustments to the slab. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our build panel for slab, and you can choose almost anywhere that you want to start. Just make sure that your Z coordinate is on. I'm going to go to this point right here, go all the way across there, and I'm going to bring it across in here. I'm going to hit enter, and let's see what we get. Alright, so it's going to go back to that view, and let's go ahead and change from 2D wireframe. This time let's just go to realistic, and what you can see, if I 3D orbit, right now that slab is at the same elevation as the rest of the house. Now we can leave this at 4 inches. What we got to do with this other slab right in here is let's go ahead and change its properties and change it to 10 inches. So you're going to see that part thicken up like that. That is our floor structure for the main level. I'm going to go ahead and change this to conceptual so we can see the difference. Now this one I can leave at 4 inches, even though it's going to have what we call a thickened edge around here and also around there. But the top of this slab is right now indicated on where our grid is. In other words, it's at 0, 0. And even though it's 4 inches deep, it's not at the right location. We need to drop that down. So with it highlighted, let's go to the properties. And thickness is fine, but we're going to run down here, and where it says elevation, I'm going to go ahead and put -1 foot. Now if you look at the drawing, when I hit enter, that slab drops down the entire foot. Now don't worry about this little gap right here, because remember, this is only one level in a composite assembly. Once we put this building together, we have the ground floor, the basement, coming up, and it's going to hit up against the bottom of this here. Now what we are going to have to do though is we are going to go ahead and bring down this slab down so that it hits across in here. I'm sorry, the wall, the brick wall is going to come down further so that it disappears into the ground. Now what I did here was I actually, let's take a look from the top and let's see what happened in here, because what I ended up doing here was I carried this slab. Let's go ahead and let's delete those two lines. And I carried that slab all the way to this point. I really did not want to do that. I want to bring it down to about this. Because what we're going to do is with our wall here, we're going to carry this down all the way to the wall down below. So I've actually got a little bit of makeup that I need to do right for this little corner for that slab. So how do we do that? So let's highlight that. And what we can do is we can try to see if we're going to go ahead and add a vertex. So I'm going to go ahead and add a vertex. And I'm going to add one right there. And if notice what ended up happening, I allowing myself then to go ahead and carry that to that corner right there. So now my slab, when we take a look at it, it should be correctly laid out. There's that little gap point right in there that we needed to do. That's going to allow the other walls from the basement to come up. Let's go ahead and let's go back to top view. I'm going to get out of conceptual and go back to 2D wireframe. And let's go ahead and let's start putting in some of the other items that we needed in here. First thing we want to take a look at is what happens when we drop down that slab. Well, this slab is now 1 foot below these walls in here. Now remember, this wall, and this wall were 4-inch walls as opposed to the 6-inch walls. So we already have a natural break here and here. Now what we need to do is to get the bottom of these walls to come down to the top of that slab. But we also want the top of the wall to remain where it is. So with all 3 walls highlighted in here, let's go to properties. What we can do is change the height of our walls and also change the elevation. First thing we're going to do is change the elevation to -1 foot, and up in here, notice what ended up happening to the walls. They're 1 foot too low because we need a continuous bearing point for our roof rafters. So what we're going to do is change the height of those 3 walls only to 9'2", and the reason we're doing that is because they're starting 1 foot further down. So now what we've got is a nice clean condition where we have our slab coming in like that, and now you're going to see what we're going to do with this in a short little while. So we're almost done with the slab condition in here. Let's go back to our top view, and if you look at your markups, we notice that there's actually a step down here that we need to do, and there's also going to be a step down here and a step down outside of this door off the dining room. So very simple. Let's go back to our slab condition, and I'm going to start about even. Actually, I'm going to start a little bit over to the left of that. Go ahead and go a little bit to the right. I'm going to come out 12 inches. Come back to the end point of that line and close it up right in there. Let's try that again. Let's start a little bit further out. 12. Hit enter. And let's see what we've got. Now we've got a similar condition. We have to make some adjustments. We know that the difference from the top of this slab here on the main level and this is 1 foot. So what we want to do is we don't have to jump down 1 foot. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a 6-inch step and then another 6 inches to that. So what do we need to do? We need to make 2 adjustments to this. We need to adjust the top of it to -6, and we have to adjust the depth to 6. So the bottom of it's going to rest at this point, going to go up 6 inches, and then it'll be another 6-inch step to the main house. So with it highlighted, let's go ahead and go to Properties. We're going to change the thickness to 6, but we're going to change the elevation to -6, and that should put us down where we want to be with that. Okay. Now don't worry about gaps, as I mentioned before. Don't worry about gaps like what we have at this moment. We're going to be fixing that up relatively quickly. So what we want to do is we want to make the bottom of this wall in the front go down to -1 foot 2, which is the elevation of the site. So it's just going to disappear once it goes down there. So let's go back to our top view. Change from conceptual to 2D wireframe. Looks like we've got most of our slabs in here, but rather than having to redraw the stoop here, let's just use the copy command. And I'm going to pull it from the center point in here to about the center point there. And I can highlight this and just bring it out a few inches here and there. And I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing to the back. I'm going to copy that from its midpoint, and I'm going to go to between 2 points, and that is placed there. So if we want to take a look at this one more time, we can orbit around it, and you guys can see that we've got a 6-inch step down here, so that when we do the pool deck in here, it'll come down to that level. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got. Now in this main level, if we were doing 3D renderings of the interiors, we would also do a cutout right here for the stairwell. But since we're not going to be doing that, we're just basically going to be using 2D line work right there. Alright, so we got one more to go. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to the basement level. And for this one, it's relatively simple. I'm just going to go ahead and follow the perimeter. In reality, what happens is when we cut the wall section, you'll see that the slab really finishes off on the inside of the block wall. The block wall continues down below the floor level and is then supported by what we would call a spread footer. But for the sake of modeling, all we really need to do is to go ahead and go to slab, start in the corner, and just work our way around. Enter. And we can leave it at 4 inches, again, because we're not really going to be using this part of the model much. And there we go. Now we're going to be using that edge when it comes time to do the foundation plan. So that's one of the reasons why we draw it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this drawing. And I'm not going to save the main level, so you can see what happens to our model. I did save the upper and the basement. So let's take a look at our view. Remember our views tab here. This is a composite model, a 3D model. So I'm going to go ahead and double click and open that up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let's take a look at here. You can see that we have the slab for the upper level, we have the slab for the lower level, but we don't have the slab for the main level, and the reason for that is that we did not save it. So let's go ahead and let's go to our main level. All we need to do is to go to our save icon. Let's go back to our model. And what we should do is we should get a notification, which we did, down here on the bottom right, that tells us your external reference file has changed. A reference file has changed and may need reloading, and it tells you which one it actually is. So let's go click on that, and then all of a sudden you see that we have got all of our slabs or floor structures included on there. So now let's go ahead and, before we attempt the roofs, let's go ahead and let's do a little bit of cleanup. I'm going to go back to the main level, And I'm going to go ahead and remove all these blocks. Save the drawing. Okay, and I'm going to go to the basement, do the same thing. And I'm going to go to the upper, and go ahead and do the same thing. And let's go ahead and save each one of those. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's remove these elements, these blocks, and let's go ahead and save this drawing. Let's go ahead and let's reopen up our model, and let's see what we've got. If we were to take a look at this in isometric view, gotten rid of all the blocks that were on there, and we can take a look at what we've got in here. So let's do some repair before we start our roofs on there. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that this wall is going to disappear into the ground. When we draw our wall section, you'll see that even though this front wall is a 12-inch CMU block, the last block is an 8-inch. So what it does, it creates a 4-inch ledge for this to rest on. So this actually needs to go about 18 inches down into the top of this wall. But what we're going to go ahead is we're just going to go ahead and bring it down about 1 foot 2, which will bring the bottom of it right to the top of what our site construct top of the elevation of the dirt is going to be. So at that point it's going to disappear. If we wanted to get fancier, we could actually trim out this wall, do some changes to it, but for the sake of the rendering, we're not going to need to do that. So let's go ahead and let's go back to the top view. Let's go to our main level, and let's see what we need to do with this wall. If you highlight this wall, and you go to properties, you can tell right now that the base of the height of the wall is 4 feet. Now we did that because what ends up happening is we want the top of our wall to be located right at the bottom of this window. So what I do is I like to switch where my UCS is, and I go here to my view panel right here, and I go to my front view so I can see what is going on with that wall that I'm trying to make modifications for. Now in this mode, which is 2D wireframe, what I like to work in, it looks like there's too much going on. So one of the things that I can do is I can sort of toggle off this brick pattern in here. If you go down to your status bar here at the bottom right, there is a panel right in here, which is surface hatch toggle. If I highlight that, you're going to see that the brick disappears, and that makes it a little bit easier to see. But there's still just way too much going on. And this is where the isolate command comes in and helps out quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this front wall and a few of the other items. Definitely include the doors and windows and the 4-inch brick wall. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a window selection for all of those items right there. And I'm going to right click, isolate, and I'm going to isolate those objects. So now I have some limited objects that if I change my UCS by going to front view, you cannot use your view cube because that is not changing where your drawing plane is. What we want to do is modify that by going to this, the view front. So let's go ahead and highlight that, and you see how easy that is to fix. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to properties, and we're going to bring the elevation of that wall to minus 1 foot 2, and that's going to put us right at the top of the dirt. Now when we do the wall section, we're of course going to modify that a little bit. So now with that done, we can highlight that wall, and I'm just going to drag it by this arrow in here and line it up with the bottom of this window right here. Now because I've got my ortho on, this is going to stay perfect right in there. and there it is located right there. The bottom is at this point. If we go to conceptual, everything looks great, except we can't get in. We still have to do the cutouts for the side lights here, and for the door, and also for this window right in here. So let's go ahead and let's clear out a conceptual. I'm going to go back to 2D wireframe and go back to the top view, and I'm going to go ahead and, if you recall, when we did a door opening, we were able to cut out part of that wall. Well, we're going to do exactly the same thing here. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to do opening. I'm going to click one here. That one's going to represent that. It's obviously not the right size, but we're going to make modifications to that. And I'm just going to do one in here, because the way that I designed this, I made sure that the window jamb and the window frame and the door frame were flush to each other. So there is no small gap in between those that we would have difficulty figuring out what to finish it with. So let's see what that looks like from the front now. So if I go to the front, this line right in here represents our opening. So once again, if you take a look at conceptual, we've already begun to cut this out, but there's modifications that we need to do to that. So what I can do is I'm going to go back to my 2D wireframe. I'm going to highlight my opening, and I'm going to grab one by here and pull that to this point, grab it by that grip, pull it to here, and I'm going to grab it by the bottom and pull that up to that point right there. Now, for the sake of visuals, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this up and line it up with that one up into there. Now let's see what the net effect of that was. If I take a look at it and go back to conceptual, that's exactly what we want. Now, I need to do the same thing here with this area where the door and the side lights are. I'm going to go back to 2D wireframe. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one up to there. I'm going to pull the bottom to the bottom here, and I'm going to pull these guys up to the sides here and the sides there. So I've got a little bit of a problem because, number one, my side lights don't go all the way up. Again, there's a little modification there. That's a minor correction that I would need to do. So all I would need to do is to highlight both of those. I'm going to go to my properties, and in terms of the height, I can actually change the height. If you look at the head height in here, if we change that head height to 6'10", that should put us flush with there. And then what I can do is I could either highlight that opening, and I can actually edit the profile or add an additional profile for it. Or what I can do is I can actually have my side lights go all the way down to the bottom. I could either do that, or I could do a separate opening for either one of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make my side lights come all the way down. So let's go ahead and highlight those two. And again, this is a design decision. So I'm going to change the height to 6'10". It's telling me that's to the outside of frame. And we'll see how that comes out. There we go. That's exactly how I wanted it to be. Let's take a look at what we've got. We go to conceptual. That is perfect. Okay. So let's go back to our top view. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my 2D wireframe. Now what I want is the rest of my drawing to come back, so I'm going to isolate, and I'm going to end object isolation. I'm going to save that, and it looks like we're doing okay here. Okay, so let's go and let's see what we can do with a couple of other items that we have a similar problem occurring with the cutouts that we needed to do up here in the front. If we go back to our basement, you recall that we put these windows in on the 8-inch block wall. But if we were to take a look at this, we see that our 4-inch stud wall that wraps around the entire perimeter actually frames over that window. So we're going to use the exact same technique. We're going to go ahead and go to opening. I'm going to click on the frame wall, place one here, and I'm just going to do one of them now. I'm going to follow the same technique. I'm going to grab all of this. I'm going to isolate the object. This time I'm not going to look at it from the front. I want to take a look at it from the right side. So I'm going to my view here, view right. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off the block in here. And this one's pretty easy to do. I'm just going to grab that by there, bring it to the top, bring this to the bottom. And with that done, I can actually just copy, use the copy command, and I can do it here in this view. Since all three of these windows are the same size, let's go ahead and let's go back to top view. Let's go to ISO view, and let's see what that looks like. So if we go back to conceptual, it looks like we cut that out pretty nicely into there. So let's go back to our 2D wireframe, go to our top view. I'm going to go ahead and isolate objects. I'm going to end isolation at this point so I get the rest of the drawing. And then what I need to do is to bring another one into here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy one more of these. And sometimes what ends up happening is that it will not copy because of the way that this is set up. Sometimes it's because we have ortho on, so let me see if that makes a difference. Let's go ahead and copy. Nope. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead, turn ortho back on. I'm going to go ahead and isolate those items in there. This time I do want to look at it from the front. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to create a opening right here. Go back to my front view, highlight the opening, back to top view, end object isolation, save my drawing, go back to my main. Make sure to save that drawing also. And it looks like the upper probably needs saving. If I zoomed anything, let's go back to our model. There it's giving me the notification, reload XRES. Let's go ahead and let's do a 3D orbit. And there we go. That's looking pretty good. So a couple things that we're going to need to do to make this thing work. Alright, so let's take a look at our roofs now. So what we have is we actually have an upper roof here. This house has certain variations. One style of the house has a gable ends on these ends, and it has a hip coming around. There's some Dutch hips, and there's the all hip. What we're going to do is our house is going to be composed of all hip roofs. Let's go ahead and I'm going to bring down my drawing right in here so we can take a look at it. And let's go to our elevations and our roof to see what we've got. Alright, so here's what we're going to use for our roof. Here's the upper level. You can tell that it's very similar to the Marion in terms of this roof that comes here, while the lower roof actually needs to wrap around the upper level and cover the front porch. There's a couple things that we need to do to the front porch to make this work. So this part of the roof that's providing shade from the front porch still needs to rest on something. So there are two columns here that are supporting a wood beam coming across here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring the wood beam coming out in here. This also tells us that our overhangs are 2 feet. There's our potential locations for downspouts, and here is our wraparound of that roof going in here. So our goal is to have our elevations sort of look like what these blue lines have indicated in here. We're going to take this part of the roof off, and we're going to end up with a hip roof here, a hip roof here, and all these hip roofs on the top. We're also going to do a 5 and 12 pitch for this, okay? And we're going to end up presenting it on a sheet of paper at 1/4 inch plan as opposed to 1/8 inch plan. So let's go ahead and let's get this out of the way. All right, and let's go back to let's start with our upper level. So what we want to do with this upper level is going to be extremely easy. Now, if you took a look at the slab, when I click on the slab, it created its own layer, A-slab. So that works for whether it's a wall, A-wall in AutoCAD architecture, a slab, A-slab, and it's also going to work for the roof, A-roof. But there are two types of roofs that we deal with. We're going to start by drawing one element roofs, which is the A-roof. And for that, we're going to go here to our build panel, and you're going to see that there's roof slab option, there's a roof option. In the roof option, it adds a roof object, which is one object, and it's kind of difficult to modify it. So what we're going to do is once we create our roof, we're then going to go ahead and convert it to a roof slab, to where then we can add materials and modify it a little bit easier. So one of the things we're not going to do, however, is delete our underlying roof. We're just going to go ahead and turn that layer off. So let's go ahead and let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and click on roof, and I'm ready to draw my roof. Now let's go ahead and let's go over to the properties palette right in here, and as you can see, there's already all sorts of information here regarding the roof. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the thickness. The default usually is 10. But we're going to go ahead and change that to 6 inches. Our edge cut, which is the end of the rafter or past the overhang at the eaves, right now is indicated at square. We're going to go ahead and change that to a plumb cut. It is single slope. Our overhang is 2 feet, and our plate height, usually the default's at 10 feet, but right now it's showing it at 8 foot 2 inches, and our rise is correct. It shows 5 inches to 12. That represents 12. So our pitch is 5 and 12. Gets you a slope angle of about 23 degrees, a little bit less than that. So let's go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and start drawing the roof. I'm going to start with this corner. I'm going to make sure my Z is on right here. And I'm going to start here. Click to this point. Click to that point, and you saw once I hit that third point, immediately this began to change. And once I'm going to go here, click on there, I'm going to hit enter. Alright, so at this point we have a roof object. So if I highlight it and you take a look at it, you see that it's one object. And if we go to the home tab and look at our layers, it's created a layer called A-roof. So let's see how this looks like. I'm going to 3D orbit around it. And let's go ahead and do exit. And as you can tell, we've got a couple things we got to fix in here. So it looks like the default wall height that we had forgot to change. So let's go ahead, and you can see that our base height of the wall is 8 foot 2. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our top view. I'm going to go ahead and go back to 2D wireframe. I'm going to go ahead and freeze the A roof layer. And I'm just going to highlight everything here. Now, what should happen is if I go to my properties, notice that it did all 84 objects. But it has no information, and that's because it can't understand so many different objects. So what we're going to do is if you actually click on there, you've got all the elements that have been selected, and one of them is wall. So there's 24 walls selected. And once you isolate that wall, we can then modify in here. So it's got our base height here. It says varies because there's probably some that are different heights, but I'm going to change that to 8 foot 2. And hopefully I think all of them must have changed to 8'2". So let's take a look and verify that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my A-roof right in here that I froze. I'm going to unfreeze it. I'm going to go back to my conceptual. Let's 3D orbit around it, and it looks much better. So what we have now is we have a condition where we've got a roof. It's a 5 12 pitch. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's go back to our model. There's our notification that the upper has changed, and there it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lay out also our main level roof in here. But first what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the columns in here and the supporting beam, which is going to be either 4x10 or a 4x8. So we're going to do, we're going to extrude it out and bring it on back onto there so we have something that we can actually rest our roof on. So I'm going to go to the main level. I'm going to go at this point, and I'm going to begin once again with the A roof. So I'm just going to do the roof at this point. I'm going to start at this point. Let's take a look at our properties. We can always change the properties later. There's our 6 inches. We still need to change this to plumb. 2 feet, 8'2" is good. 5 12 is good. So all of that is pretty well done. Let's go ahead and click here. I'm going to go to perpendicular here. Make sure the Z is on. Go to here and click right here and hit enter. And let's go ahead and let's see what we got. I'm going to go ahead and go to conceptual. And there we go. It looks like we've got the same problem with the wall. So this time, without even changing actually, I am going to go ahead and isolate that object and hide the object, and I'm going to select most of my walls with the exception of these 3 walls right here. And I'm going to leave those. I think I set that up. Let's see what we've got in terms of our walls. Located right in here. Alright, all of these are at 8'2". Let's check and see what happened with our A roof. I'm going to go back to my isolate and object isolation. I'm going to highlight my roof. Properties, bearing is 8'2", so everything looks good in there. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And at this point you start going back and forth between your model and your constructs. You can take a look at that. That looks actually pretty good. We've got a little overlap in there that's not ideal, so we may want to change our pitch of our roof a little bit, maybe to about 4.5 in 12. That's going to change both of those, and I think that's still acceptable for what we want. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's go back to our main. I'm going to highlight my roof in here. I'm going to go to the properties, and instead of 5 I'm going to do 4.5. Okay, that lowers that, and I kind of want the same thing. Since we are consistent, I'm going to go to the upper level. I'm going to highlight that, and I am going to change that one also to 4.5 in 12 pitch. Now all of that is going to affect our elevations and a few other things in terms of our wall section and so on. So let's go ahead and let's see how this looks. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's go back to our model, reload modified XRES, and let's see what we've got going on here. Okay, that looks a lot better. It looks like we've got a clean, we don't have any conflicts at that point. Still a little bit close, but that's acceptable. This looks acceptable here too, where it's going to be cutting. A little bit close, but I think at 5 and 12 we might have been into the windows there also. So let's go ahead and let's create our support here before we start turning these into roof slabs. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our main level. I'm going to go ahead and go to the top. I'm going to go and change this conceptual to 2D wireframe. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start drawing our columns there. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see if we've got a layer, a structural layer. We got S beam above. We could do S column, create a structural column for that. And then what we can do is switch to the S-beam above to draw that. So what we can do is let's start with that one, and we'll come back later on and create one. So let's make this our current. And I am going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a polyline. Actually, let's just call this S-beam. Okay, I'm going to modify this now. So let's go ahead and let's change the name, and we're going to change a couple of other things in there. So let's go all the way down to our S structure down at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to change this to just S-beam. You can leave the color is fine, but I'm going to make this also our continuous line type. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to call that one S-COLM, or we can just do CLN. Let's do CLMN for column. Continuous is 15. We can leave it at that also. And let's go ahead and let's start with our S-beam as our current layer. I'll go ahead and close out of this. Try to get this down. So let's go ahead and close that out. Got our S-beam. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a polyline. I'm going to start at this corner. And I'm going to bring it all the way here to the wall. I'm going to go 4 inches over. I'm not worried so much about nominal. So I'm going to go down to here. Repeat the polyline here. Go up 4. And bring that guy in here. And I'm going to fillet these two. So if we go to our isometric view, you're going to see that this is located not on the slab, because the slab is at -1, but this is located on our benchmark elevation. You can see it right in here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this up 10 inches. It's going to represent our 4x10 beam. So I'm going to look for my solids tab right in here. I don't have it, so I'm going to go ahead and right click, show tabs, go to solids. Click on solids here, extrude, select it, hit enter, and extrude up to 10 inches. So what I need to do now is to actually raise the beam up so that it lines up here with the top of the wall. This is one of those rare occasions where I'm going to actually turn off this replace Z value so that we can actually move this along the Z. So I'm going to use the move command. I'm going to find this snap point right here, end point, and I'm going to bring it straight up here, and I'm going to find that point right into there. I'm going to turn that back on, and what I now have is I have my beam located accurately. And now what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and let's draw 2 4x4 posts that are going to represent our columns. I'm going to draw one, 4, and I'm going to go ahead and move it from here down to that corner. I'll go back to my isometric so I can see this in 3D, and once again it's up 1 foot, so I need to go ahead and move this. I'm going to move it along my Z-axis down. I'm going to move it -1 foot. I'm sorry, because I went in that direction. Let's go ahead. I'm going to move it. Since I was already facing that direction, I don't need to put the negative in, so I'm going to put 1 foot, and that is resting right on the corner. Now I'm going to do a little bit of math because I need to bring this up. Would be 9'2" to the top of that wall minus 10 inches. So we're going to have probably 8'6" that we need to go up. That'll give us, it's going to be 8'4" plus 10 inches is going to give us 9'2". So what I need to do is extrude this one, and I'm going to go to solids, extrude. Whoops, let's undo that. So we're going to go extrude, go up and do 8'4", and that brings it right to the bottom of the beam. Let's go ahead and find our 2 columns there. So let's go ahead and find our midpoint right in here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take it from the inside to the inside. So I can actually draw a line from mid between 2 points, draw it right in there, and then I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. No sense in going through that, all that stuff we just did in terms of extruding, etc. Time to be efficient. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's see what's going on with our model. So let's go back to this point. I'm going to reload the main, and let's see what we got. There's our support columns right there. Actually, if we look inside, we're going to see that we've got our beam going around in there. We haven't applied any material, so the colors really don't matter that much. We've got our roof coming out that way. It's extending out to the bottom. So we may want to cut this part off of the roof, but that's what we're going to do now when we're trimming this roof. So that roof is actually going to stop right here. When we do our fascia board, we may extend our fascia board, but our beam looks fine the way it is. All right, so right now what we've got is we've got 2 roof objects. What we need to do is convert these to roof slabs. So let's go ahead and let's start with our upper. And this one is a pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is convert to a roof slab. Now the minute that we highlight the roof object, which is A-roof, if I highlighted this, you'll see here in the Home tab at A-roof. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight it. When we do that, we get a special panel here. There's our tab for the roof. And you've got some options in here. You can either edit the edges or you can convert. And right here we're going to convert to a roof slab. It says standard is what we're going to convert to. That is fine. And I don't want to erase the layout geometry yet. Maybe towards the end we'll do it. But at this point I want to leave that unchecked. I'm going to do OK. And what's happened right now is it's created a second layer. Red, that's a roof slab. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to, when it comes down to our A-roof, I'm going to go ahead and freeze and turn it off. And the only thing I'm left with is my slabs. Now, remember before when I clicked on the roof object, everything highlighted. Now what it's done is it's actually separated into separate faces, in this case slabs, for the roof. So let's go ahead and let's save that. Let's go to our main level. Now this one is a little bit different, and the reason it's different is because we actually have to trim out or cut out part of this roof that's going to be over the second level. In other words, right now this roof is intruding into the house, so we need to actually trim it off where the second level is. So when I highlight the roof and I convert it, okay, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Erase layout geometry. I'm not going to highlight. I'm going to do OK for that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and turn off my A roof once again and just leave the A roof slab right here on. So I'm going to turn those 2 off. I'm going to turn it off and also freeze it. So once again I'm left with this. Now whenever I highlight one of these, we go to a panel that's roof slab, and there's a number of options in here, and one of these options is trim, extend, miter, cut. Now these are not the same as the ones that we find in our Home tab under modify. These are unique for the roof. So what we want to do is our second level actually extends out through here. There's a 2-foot overhang this way and then comes all the way across. So when I go ahead and click on trim, I need something to use as my trimming objects. So I have some options here. It says select trimming objects, a slab, a wall, or a polyline. The polyline is what usually works best for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of that command and I'm going to go to a polyline. I can be in the S-beam, or actually I could be in layer 0 if you want. This is only a temporary layer that we're going to be using. You could use depth points if you're worried that it might print. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the draw command, go to polyline, and I'm going to draw here from the frame wall, not the 4-inch brick wall that we have in there. I'm going to come here to that corner and I'm going to extend beyond in here. Now I'm going to take that polyline that I drew, select it, and I'm going to move it down the 2 feet so that this front edge down here represents the edge of the second level. So now I can use this to trim out the areas that I do not want my roof slabs. And we're going to do these one at a time. So I'm going to take this one. I'm going to go ahead and go to trim, and it says select slab, wall, or polyline. I'm going to select that polyline, and then it says which side do you want to trim. Well, I want to keep this side. I want this portion of this one face or slab done. Now I don't have to highlight it, I don't have to click on it, I don't have to be in it. I could be just on this side of the polyline. So I can left click and it trims away that whole area. So now this roof slab extends just here. Let's do the same thing with this one. Go to trim, select my trimming object, and I want to trim again this side. Click, and then I've got this little piece right in here. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to trim, select my cutting edge, and I'm going to be on this side of that polyline. Click, and it looks like we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I may have to redraw it if I've made an error or a mistake. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to take a look at my model one more time. So it should not look too different, but I'm going to go ahead and reload. And then what you see is that our roof slab and our roof, those two layers are trying to occupy the same space. Now, even though we saved them and turned them off in our constructs, oftentimes if they had already been created and brought into our model as a construct, it did not turn it off yet. So how do we fix that? Well, we need to go into our layer manager. I'm going to highlight that. Let's do our XRefs in here. And I'm going to start with my upper. And all I want to see is the layers that are up in there. So let's go to A roof. I want to keep A roof slab, so I want to keep this one, but I want this one turned off and frozen. Okay, now I'm going to go to the main level. Now I want to do the exact same thing. So here's my main level. Freeze. Turn off. And there we go. So what we've got now is we've got a nice roof setup right in here. And we are on our way with our model. What we're going to go ahead and do on our next video is we're going to go ahead and start developing the site, and then we're going to come back and start adding some additional features that we want to add to here. Besides the site, driveway, road, our walking areas, and so on, we're also going to add the second level chimney coming up through the roof. We're also going to be adding some fascias and some other elements to our model. So this concludes our video regarding our slabs and regarding our roofs. Now, if there are any questions on exactly why we have this gap here or so on, your questions that you typically have will be answered when we start doing the site, and you can see what we're going to be visualizing when we put the entire assembly and composite drawing together.